All right then, so are you folks in for a treat? This guy is like the rock star of rock stars when it comes to talking about issues related to consumer fraud, elder financial abuse, and everything in between. All right, so Ryan Sothan is an outreach coordinator with the Nebraska Attorney General's office. Mr. Sothan has statewide responsibility for developing and implementing community-based initiatives for educating Nebraskans in the area of consumer fraud, elder financial abuse, predatory and illegal business practices, identity theft, and internet safety. As a committed road warrior in fulfilling an average of 180 calendar engagements per year, his educational outreach services are extended to more than 20,000 Nebraskans annually. And I would just personally tell you, he does a brilliant job in terms of his presentation. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and he truly is a friend of the Elder Justice training program. So please join me in welcoming Ryan. Thank you.
Well, Julie, thank you for the introduction. I think you have figured out what Madhvi learned long ago and Antonio has now discovered as well. I have a great character flaw in that I am extremely superficial and very shallow. I tend to like people who like me. So that was a very warm welcome, and I appreciate it. This is my third year in a row speaking at the Elder Justice Training. I appreciate the opportunity each and every year. It has been a year of change, or at least 9 months since I was last here speaking, and some of that change has definitely been for the better, in that I can recount personally that we seem to be returning to normal. Doors are opening, welcome mats are out, congregate meals are being served, invitations to speak are becoming plentiful once again, but I will confess my calendar is not yet as full post-COVID as it was pre-COVID, so that if you're looking for someone for programming for your group, please don't hesitate to contact the Attorney General's office. You can reach me directly at the number provided on the slide set and on the last slide here today, or you can access our website at protectthegoodlife.nebraska.gov and select presentation, schedule a presentation, and that will come directly to me, and I'll be in close contact with you, and we will get her done. Now, I tend to like to begin my presentations with a story. This is a story that was shared earlier this year as I attended a performance at our Performing Arts Center here in Lincoln, which is the Lead Center. It was a story that played to a full house of 2,200, which is the approximate capacity of the Lead. And in tow was my 91-year-old mother. Most of the audience was comprised of seniors, so it met with their approval, it met with my mother's approval. I hope it meets with your approval. But the story involves a senior, a male senior who sadly was a widower. And on the eve of his 80th birthday, his sons decided to surprise him with an all-expense paid trip to Vegas. So as they got to Vegas on his birthday, they celebrated, as we all might do, with some gambling, some fine food and wine, took in a show, enjoyed the fountains at the Bellagio, and then said their goodnights, and the senior, feeling well celebrated, retired for the evening. Unbeknownst to him, his sons had scheduled a visit by one of Las Vegas's professional ladies of the night. Remember, Mom approved. So there was a knock at the door. The gentleman opened the door and was very surprised to find a beautiful woman in front of him who said, "Happy birthday, sir. I am your birthday present, and I am here to provide you a night of super sex. Super sex." And the gentleman, in a moment of confusion, sorted his options and said, "I think I'd like to try the soup." That is a story that I tell because it is a popular story, but it also contains all of the elements of a scam. Imposter scams, which are legion and which grew in the past year, pivot off of a storyline. That storyline typically has elements of too good to be true in this case, or too compelling to ignore. There is also the ability to be put back on your heels, caught up in the emotion of the moment, where the emotions flood the system and outweigh the logical left brain side, so you're not thinking as rationally as you might. Then there's typically urgency applied, that you need to do something, make a decision, act, not now, but right now. And typically what you need to do in acting is to part with some measure of your hard-earned income, savings, retirement, or whatever your store of funds is. There are other elements as well, but we're going to look at in this update some old information, some new information, some familiar, and some reflecting change. But I'm going to focus on storyline impacts and recognize that we have to address the storytellers, which I believe that we can do so increasingly by the deployment of technology, which is here and available today, through education and outreach to focus on prevention strategies. And then I think there are some promising developments in science, in pharmacology, in treatment potentials, and then wrap that around service and support that can come from law enforcement efforts. And I think that we'll begin to address more forthrightly the services of frauds and scams to better serve our population, our most vulnerable population, as is. But with that, I'm going to get into the update, and it's a good news story. I led with that last year. It's even better this year, in that from the FTC, looking at the data that they share with us, this is a stack ranking of the 50 states when it comes to frauds and scams. And this is a stack ranking where you do not want to be in the low numbers. You don't want to be 1, 2, or 3. You want to be in the high numbers, and Nebraska, circled here, comes in at 47th out of the 50 states when it comes to overall exposure to fraud and scams. This is a significant improvement over the 12 years that I've been in title, where we were in the low to mid 30s. This is indicating that our efforts collectively, everyone who's attending this conference, are paying off. So if you're wanting your lives to count, if you're wanting to make a difference, whether you work for one of our area agencies on aging, our very talented and undersung state unit on aging, whether you're a senior center manager, director of a congregate living facility, provider of in-home health care, a lawyer, a CPA, your focus and attention to the matters that we're sharing here today and in previous sessions is absolutely creating this positive environment for our vulnerable seniors to enjoy. That's a good news, and I thank all of you and congratulate all of you. The story is almost as good when it comes to identity theft. Here, this is the nation's #1 consumer complaint, has been for the 22-year duration of this relatively young century, but we still come in at a very respectable 45th. So we're in the, depending on if you view your glass half empty or half full, we're still in what I'll call the top 10% in terms of best states with lowest overall risk exposure to the significant losses and damages that can accrue from identity theft. So it is a good news story continuing to trend in a positive direction. Now, this is a very familiar slide. This has been part of my slide deck for the past 12 years. This is a breakdown of complaints by age cohort. And you can see that generally speaking, If you're under age 60, you account for approximately 15% of all complaints. But something happens when we become age 60 and above. There you account for, or the age group accounts for, approximately 1 out of every 3 complaints. And this sadly represents a slight uptick over the previous year, an uptick of approximately 6%. Why? There's a COVID-related impact here, and when we get into our top 10, we're going to see that moving into the top 5 were such things as online shopping related complaints, home improvement related complaints, home repair and improvement complaints, and then as well concerns for auto related complaints. There's also then a technology component to this, in that in years past I talked about the TRACE Act, the Telephone Robocall Abuse, Criminal Enforcement and Deterrence Act. We'll speak a little bit more on that later in the presentation, but that implemented on, I believe it was June 30 of last year. There was a rush of scam calls during the January 1 to June 30 timeframe. And that measured in because telephone calls, fraudulent telephone calls, still is a large driver of fraud and abuse. Now, this continues to be disproportionate. I have this segment defined as age 60 and above. 2 of our previous presenters defined the segment at age 65 and above. That's why I list 19%, not the 15 and 16% that you saw in the 2 previous presentations. But in the light blue, you can see that our seniors account for 19% of the Nebraska population, but 35% of our complaints. This speaks to 2 things, and 2 things primarily. One is deliberate targeting. Why are our seniors being targeted? Because of availability, because of willingness to engage, because of high compliance factors, and the fact that if a connection can be made, you will find that we will extend ourselves to our own detriment to serve the needs of the new friend that we have made over the course of the telephone call. There's also a severe case of underreporting. Reasons for underreporting are many. Some can be speculated, but are generally believed to be personal shame and embarrassment, as well as fear of the unknown. How might family members react, for example, to my reporting that I have just given away their inheritance over the past 6 months? Might they limit my freedoms? Do I have to suffer limited independence through a power of attorney, or perhaps a guardianship or conservatorship, as was mentioned earlier? I had the opportunity to speak for a 90-second segment that will be broadcast perhaps as early as next week on talk radio, interpreting the most recent article published by AARP. I think it came out approximately 3 weeks ago, that suggested that we need to stop blaming the victims for their own demise. And I agree with that in part, but I want to hearken back to the fact that though there is a strong, willing suspension of disbelief based on the storyline that is being told by the scammer, it is not the victim's fault that the storyteller is practiced, professional, and perfect at their craft. Think of the outstanding storytellers that we have. For example, in the movies, we have a Steven Spielberg who has charmed us with movies from, goodness, beginning with Jaws through Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. We didn't celebrate the audience for those movies being successful. We celebrated him as a consummate storyteller. So consequently, when his most recent movie, which was a remake of, the retelling of West Side Story, it bombed. Did we blame the audience for not understanding the master? No, it was a poorly done film. So I'm trying to convey the notion that we have to address the storyteller. We have to shame the storyteller. We have to limit the storyteller. We have to cut off their market. And that is why I am indicating that technology is going to go a long way in terms of separating the storyteller from their market. Then there's a continued role for education and enforcement, and then all other. But the storyteller, more than the victim, is the one who is truly at fault and needs to be addressed. Now, new information for you, not contained in past presentations. This is a method of fraud reports by contact method. No surprise, looking here at the left, we have the telephone dominant at 1 out of every 3 fraud reports is based on a fraudulent telephone call. But I think you'll be surprised when we correlate method of contact to actual loss, that it's the newer, no longer emerging technologies where the loss potential is substantially greater. Websites, fraudulent websites, think shopping websites, pop-up ads that say, warning, you may have a virus. And then social media, contacts for romance scams, for example. Or perhaps, hey, I got COVID relief dollars by going to this website and I saw your name on the list. Check it out. These are the emerging scam trends that are leading to big dollars. But I don't want you to think that that's where the totality of the loss is occurring. That 9% of loss from telephone calls still averages $1,200 on median average by victim. The website and social media losses, $300 and $400 respectively. So by number, the phone is still the dominant contributor that must be addressed, and that's why I'm encouraged by technological advances. So the overall median loss, $643 per victim across this broad waterfront of methods. And I'm going to go back just a second. I thought I had another slide in there because this will also skew based on age. When we get to be seniors, as I define it rather generously and broadly at age 60 and above, you're going to find that actually at 60 to 69, losses are below this median. They number, in the $500 range. Then as you turn 70 to 79, they go up about 23% into the $700 plus range until you get to be 80 and above, and they soar to the $1,700 range. So the older we get, the more vulnerable we become to significantly higher dollar losses. So let's look at our top 10. Our top 10 has shown some rotation within the past year, but imposter scams and identity theft, the 2 items that I have emboldened in this top 10, continue to dominate, with imposter scams leading the way. This is the art of the storyteller. We'll look at some of the imposter scams and address 2 of them specifically. But they account for virtually 1 out of every 3 complaints to the office, with identity theft then picking up another substantial double-digit proportion, but the 2 together account for about 45 to 48% of all complaints. So it's not quite a Pareto, but we still have 20% accounting for roughly 48% of all complaints to the office. But I mentioned the 6% slide back that occurred within the senior segment over the past year. And I talked about auto-related scams, home repair and improvement, and product scams, and online shopping. What's going on here? Well, first of all, auto-related. Have you tried to buy a car in the past 3 years? There are none available. Lots are empty. Used cars are going for a handsome premium, but most people, because of a lack of choice and availability, are choosing to keep their current cars longer and therefore repaired. So we're getting an awful lot of complaints about quality of car repair. Home repair and improvements, somewhat the similar story. If we're having to shelter in place, by golly, we're going to have our house the way we want it. I'm going to expand that kitchen. I'm going to renew that bathroom. I'm going to build out that deck. I'm going to re-pour the patio. We are fraught with complaints from contractors who might be coming in demanding a large upfront down payment, beginning the work, and then never coming back to the job. Or the job is done with poor quality and a lack of timeliness. And then online shopping, so much of our behavior has moved online. Online shopping complaints fall into three categories. One is that the item that I ordered never arrived. Two, the item that I ordered arrived, but it wasn't as described. Three, because the item was wrong and I had to return it, I was socked with a restocking fee of 25% and I had to pick up the return freight. That's not right. These three complaints, the auto-related, home repair, and online shopping, this is bread and butter for our Consumer Affairs Response Team. On behalf of the seniors that you represent, please put them in contact with our CART team through our website or by dialing direct. The information is in the slide deck. And we will have a talented consumer advocate involved in a review and determination if the Attorney General's office on a voluntary basis with that business can resolve your issue. Now, let's look at some of the imposter scams. Business imposter scams stood out to me in this past year, and I think all of you are familiar with calls from Amazon. The call is something to the effect of, "This is the fraud department of Amazon calling. We noticed a $299 charge to your Prime account for a laptop computer that appeared to be out of what our algorithms say is your purchase behavior. We're simply calling to confirm, did you make this purchase? If so, do nothing, and we'll fulfill it according to terms. But if you did not, press 1 now. You'll be connected to one of our customer service agents, and we're going to reverse those charges so that you are reimbursed to your bank account for those funds." All we need. When you press that number, your bank account number, the bank routing number, bank name, bank routing number, and account number. In fact, this type of scam can mutate into something larger. I think many of us might be aware of a story that broke about 2 weeks ago of a Lincoln woman who got that call that I just described. Is this purchase for a laptop computer your purchase? No, it's not. It escalates into a story of supposed money laundering, working with a DEA agent, and long story short, through a series of requests to leave, in one instance, actually in 2 instances, money in a bag on the front porch, and then later precious metals on a front porch. They lost a total of $150,000. A similar story occurred at a central Nebraska bank where the scammer led the individual to believe that they needed to withdraw money from their account, and then eroded this senior's trust in their bank officer and teller line, saying that there is a bad actor within the bank and we are asking you to participate with us in apprehending this bad actor. Their losses totaled just under $100,000. So that willing suspension of disbelief does take a role here, but both of these people thought that they were doing the right thing. They were working with law enforcement. They were apprehending a bad guy. Other people would be saved as a result of the labors of that individual and their participation. So again, it's the master storyteller who's at fault, not the victim. And here, just to carry through on the example in Lincoln, the DEA is aware, the Drug Enforcement Agency is aware that scammers are impersonating their agents. And so if you should have someone in your area who is able to confess, or question this type of scam, you can take them right to the Drug Enforcement Administration site and indicate that this is a well-known scam. The other popular imposter scams populate the screen now. I have had brought to my attention through direct calls, which I always welcome, a number of romance scams, typically adult children whose parent has suffered a loss of the other parent and has availed themselves of various and sundry online dating sites to their ultimate demise. And when I say demise, I mean, pardon me, financially. Nothing worse than that. But it's significant, and in order to help, there's a couple of things that can be done to suss out, if you will, whether or not this perfect profile is legit. The first thing that you can do is a reverse image scam. This is an actual ID that was submitted by a senior to our office from someone who was playing a similar scam, pretending that they were a agent and investigator for the Federal Trade Commission, and telling them that they were being defrauded and to trust them and money requests, what have you. You're saying, well, that doesn't sound like a romance scam. I'm pivoting to that now. Because Mr. Smith, Kevin Smith there, what you can do is you can focus on the photo by right-clicking. So in right-clicking, you can capture, copy, paste that image into a search engine, your favorite search engine. But there is a search engine, Google Image, some of you might have used that, where you can drop the photo in, hit search, and find out instances on the web of where else that stock photo might have appeared. This one was discovered to have appeared to a free photo editing website where you can retouch and create the perfect photo. And there is the alleged Agent Smith, and we can dress Agent Smith in any form of attire that we want, from classic IBM blue suit to casual athlete. But this is a simple right-click, copy, paste, search. The other thing that you can do, and I highly encourage this, especially in today's day and age, is that before you ever meet, and all of these should be leading up to an eventual face-to-face meeting, is you can be face-to-face online through services such as FaceTime, such as, oh goodness, Zoom. I think we're all familiar with Zoom, and I believe Skype, if anyone is still using Skype. But encourage the senior to ask their beloved to meet with them in video conference, and I guarantee that the love interest will have an excuse or a series of excuses as to why that cannot be done. But those two tests should be enough to allow you to regain the authority, if you will, the credibility, to convince the senior that they are dealing with an imposter. And recognize that virtually all romance scams come with a money ask. There's a grooming period involved, but just before you're scheduled to meet, something's going to come up in that individual's line of work, family relations, or what have you. And you, in your disappointment, recognizing that they're going to recognize that they have to reallocate their funds, short term and delay, are going to say, well, I'd be happy to help if I can. You might negotiate whatever it is that the paramour needs, and they'll ask for payment by wire or increasingly by gift card. The most popular gift card of late is the Vanilla Visa, which is pictured here. Those of you who have been around a while will recognize that Vanilla Visa is issued by Green Dot Bank. Green Dot Bank of Pasadena, California. 5 years ago, their card, the Money Pack card, was the most popular card for frauds and scams. So much it was synonymous with fraud, and Green Dot pulled it out of circulation. So the Green Dot card by brand is gone. It has been replaced by the vanilla Visa. This is sold on end caps and customer service counters everywhere, from grocery stores to the Dollar General to Walmart. You might be asked, you, the victim, might be asked to buy the card in whatever denomination, and I think these are denominated up to 250, or they're blank slugs, and you can load the card with whatever value the scammer is asking for by transferring the funds either as cash onto the card or through your checking or savings account. But the scammer will then ask you to perhaps take a picture on your smartphone and text the picture of the card front and back, because they want the card number and the authorization number to release the funds, including the security code. Do not provide that information because it's the same as sending cash. But vanilla Visa is something I want to make the group here aware of. Now, imposter scams are a means to an end, and that end is often identity theft. Identity theft, as I said earlier, is the nation's #1 consumer complaint. It continues nationally as #1. #2 here in Nebraska, outdone handily by imposter scams. But identity fraud increased another 3% last year in 2021 over the soaring increase of nearly 50% in the previous year. It continues to be led of late by the single category of government documents and benefits, which has largely been defined as fraudulent unemployment insurance claims. I think this slide is easier to understand as a bar chart. Here we have all of the dominant drivers of identity theft. Right in the middle is our government documents and benefits fraud at 23%. But I think this is a little bit misleading because identity theft is actually driven by the desire for free cash flow. So I'm going to circle fraudulent bank accounts, credit card fraud, which is the ability to apply online for as many Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex, big box department store cards, and then fraudulent loan and leases. These are all variations on a common theme of free cash flow, and if you add the three together, you get 42% of the demand for a stolen identity is again for the cash flow basis. That is unless you're a senior. If you're a senior, the chart skews a little bit differently. I've indicated the seniors here in light blue, and that is, you'll see right in the center that government documents and benefit fraud soars to 37%. You're going, wait a second, most seniors aren't employed. Are they filing fraudulent unemployment insurance claims or having those claims filed against them? No. These are Medicare related calls and fraud. Such things as durable medical equipment pitches, where congratulations, you qualify for a new mobility device, orthotics, a leg brace, what have you, and it costs you nothing. It's paid for by the government. All I need is your Medicare number, and it will be shipped to you free of charge. These can also be calls that there is something wrong with your Medicare account and benefits might be suspended. But please know that you are not to give out your Medicare number, that fraudulent DME calls are legion, and if you suspect Medicare fraud, especially in a Medicare facility, CMS is a possible answer, and in Nebraska for Medicaid, if it's a Medicaid paid facility, the Attorney General's office through our Medicaid fraud and Medicaid fraud and patient abuse unit is your primary point of contact. There also is some suspect of bank fraud. This is the ability of the seniors, because that's where the money is. Seniors are retired and have the greatest store of assets and value. The scammer will attempt to access those funds by opening a bank account and leveraging through ACH or automated clearinghouse and other forms of electronic transfer. The best defense continues to be the security freeze. I simply wanted to emphasize this. I think I've talked about this every year. This is a directive that you yourself, you being the senior, establish with each of the 3 credit reporting agencies, prohibiting the release of your credit report to any inquisitor without your prior notification and approval. What might that look like? How does that work? It's outlined in our Identity Theft Consumer Guide, which is available on our website, but this is what I'm trying to get to. What might that look like? Here is a copy of an actual letter in terms of how the security freeze protected this Nebraskan. And I'm going to highlight this paragraph here because the language makes clear that the security freeze prevented the disclosure. We did not approve your application at this time for the following reasons. The credit reporting agency advised us that a security credit freeze was placed on your report. Unfortunately, due to the freeze, we were unable to verify your credit history with other credit grantors, consequently denied. Easiest thing in the world, free of charge, can be done by telephone. If the senior is phobic when it comes to going online, no worries. It is easy to implement by phone. If they're capable, and this is one of the things that we teach in our Crossing the Digital Divide course for seniors, they can go online and it could not be simpler. This is the Experience site. The Equifax and the TransUnion sites will look a little bit different, but right here to the upper left in about the 10 o'clock position is add a security freeze. You can simply click on it and add the freeze virtually instantaneously to your account, and just as quickly at about the 2 o'clock position here, you can lift or remove that freeze temporarily or permanently if you yourself are seeking new credit. Very easy, but I can see they may need your help as a trusted advisor to navigate the process. Stopping unwanted calls. I have talked for the past 2 years about the coming of the Telephone Robocall Abuse Criminal Enforcement and Deterrence Act, about the implementation of the Traced Act, and now about modifications to the Traced Act. This is the technology that I spoke of at the beginning of my presentation, which is designed to implement a call authentication structure into the telephone networks, beginning with voice over internet protocol or internet-based dialing. It was supposed to be a panacea, implementing for the second half of the year last year on June 30, and it is working, but it's not working nearly as well as intended. Why not? There was a gaping hole or two in the process. It was discovered largely through actions from the Indiana Attorney General's office when they had billions of calls coming into the state post-implementation of the Traced Act, that gateway providers. A gateway is a telephone company whose name you would never recognize, but they serve to connect foreign telephone networks to the U.S. telephone network. Gateway providers somehow had been excluded from the requirement to participate in the Traced Act. So they were not scanning for the digital token, and if the digital token was not present, they were not blocking the call or passing the call with warning to the consumer. So the intention to stop the flood of calls from scammers, and the overwhelming majority of scam calls come from across the oceans and depend on gateways to connect to the U.S. telephone networks. That became the fly in the ointment. The FCC, recognizing that, issued a ruling about the third week in May of this year, and it mandated that the gateways comply with the Traced Act and its stir-shaken technology implementation of scanning for, of providing the caller ID authentication and scanning for the token. Furthermore, another fly in the ointment, especially for Nebraskans, is that Legacy networks. A legacy network you can think of as the old landline-based copper wire that you might see strung from poles or buried in your backyard. Legacy networks, which would be defined as a telephone company with 100,000 customers or fewer, had also been excluded from the immediate implementation requirement and given another 2 years to transition. The scammers, knowing this, began to seize on small states like Nebraska and pepper us with an increased number of calls. In the same order from the FCC is the requirement that legacy networks be fully compliant with the TRACE Act implementation as of July 1 of this year. So, timeframe's been moved up. We are anticipating, we are hopeful that during the course of the second half of this year, and we're only 5 weeks into the new year, that we will see by Christmas time or the turn of the new year a significant reduction in these calls. This is why I'm so optimistic that technology is going to be at the forefront of our efforts to protect our seniors from exposure to these master storytellers. And there I'm just highlighting the pivotal paragraph in terms of the demand that the Federal Communications Commission has put on the major telephone companies. And there's the end date, June 30, 2022. Now, this is a familiar slide. In the meantime, you can help your senior understand that the telephone companies have been required to now actively promote these TRACE Act services. They're allowed to brand them and actively promote. And so they have names, for example, like with Verizon, as the, I believe this is called Call Filter. AT&T's Call Protect, and the combined T-Mobile and Sprint Scam Shield. Help them know that there are products that are available through network carriers that specifically address scam calls and what can be done to preclude those calls from successfully getting through to you, much less the senior. We have updated our marketing collateral on this topic of late. Here is what it looks like. This is available on our website at protectthegoodlife.nebraska.gov. And I want to focus on this first page, which is unwanted calls on your landline. Earlier today, Cindy gave a very compelling story of a senior who had been scammed by believing that she was delinquent on her taxes with the IRS. Sounded an awful lot like money laundering to me, particularly as the funds were being sent to another senior in, I believe it was London, Kentucky. And there was a question of what could be done. Well, absolutely, that can be escalated to our attention. But the first thing that I would do is I would deploy on both the Lincoln resident and the London, Kentucky residents telephones selective call acceptance. This is *64 on the keypad, and what you're essentially doing is you're building a whitelist of calls that your phone will accept. The numbers that can be included on that whitelist vary by who your carrier is. It can be as few as 12 to as many as, generally speaking, 30. And I think most seniors would be hard-pressed to say that there are 30 people that they want to hear from. Absolutely, they want to hear from all of their family members. They're going to want to hear from selected friends, perhaps a trusted advisor or two. But anyone not on the list is blocked, and they're blocked permanently, and they can do nothing to add their name and number. That has to be done by the user. So in this instance, I believe we were talking about a nephew who was involved. I would counsel the nephew to put this on the aunt's telephone without telling her. And therefore, you have broken the connection between the scammer and the senior through that telephone. Now, they might respond through some other method. I have heard of scammers sending their victims cell phones, but we have to stop the flow, and this is one of the easiest cost advantage, because there is no cost, ways to disrupt that flow. There are other things that can be done, particularly if the senior perhaps is a smartphone user. I don't find a lot of smartphone adoption in the senior segment, but concede that there is some. There are features in the phone itself, for example, how your phone will only ring from individuals that appear in your contact list. Everybody else is silent ring and sent to voicemail. There are carrier-provided features. We just saw Verizon with Call Filter, AT&T with Call Protect, T-Mobile with Scam Shield. Those need to be checked out. And then there are third-party call blocking apps that are available, typically for free, through the App Store or through Google Play. Education has a premier role in the fight, and I mentioned 2 years ago that we need to begin educating our seniors to adapt technology for the simplest of purposes to serve them safely. What I'm wanting the seniors to be able to do, and I'm stepping into the breach to help provide, is I'd like them to be able to bank online, which means access their accounts and move funds between checking and savings, maybe even pay bills online. I'd like them to have the opportunity to shop online and have goods and services delivered to their door. It keeps them safe. I'd like them to be able to protect their credit and identity online, to take out that security freeze, and then to do so by staying secure, so understanding what some of the risks are and how you shop only from secure websites, how you keep a clean machine by keeping your computer automatically updated to the latest operating system. And this is conveyed in the course that has now rolled out called Crossing the Digital Divide, a Guide for Seniors. The 10 things that we seek to teach over 3 courses, and it's 3 hours total, with the first hour and a half being a doozy, because that's assuming that the senior knows nothing and we get into devices and the navigation within those devices. But in part 2 is the real meat of the matter, where we talk about banking online and shopping online. In part 3, we get into the ordering of the credit report and then the cybersecurity. But these 10 things are what we're seeking to teach in a 3-hour delivery, basically across 3 sessions. Be happy to do so. We've done so with OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, both last fall and this spring. We also delivered this through Central Community College in both Kearney and in Holdridge. And then kind of a hybridization of this is Safety in Numbers, 4 lessons in cybersecurity. This is for the senior who might have some tech savvy and is already with smartphone or tablet. And we just delivered that most recently through the Northeast Nebraska Area Agency on Aging. So please contact me for more. With that, the contact information to reach us is via our website. Here's the consumer site, protectthegoodlife.nebraska.gov. Here's schedule a presentation over second from right. Filing a complaint, reporting a scam, the identity theft. As you can see and read, this is the CART number, the Consumer Affairs Response Team, for voluntary engagement with the business and the complainant through our office. 727-6432, don't be shy. And then finally, let us hear from you directly. I always like to give out my personal number. A number of you are taking advantage of it. Contact me with a question, for help, or to schedule a presentation. We're doing good work. The trends are moving in the right direction. I'm delighted to be asked to present. Thank you for having me 3 years in a row, and I'm happy to take any questions, assuming there might be some.
One question is, as far as when you want to utilize the number for blocking numbers is the *64. Is there a procedure for that? Is it when someone is calling and then you press that number during the call, after?
Okay. Yes, there are procedures. If you want to block the last number that called you, it's #01#. But these procedures are standardized. They're available from whomever your carrier is, and this is a landline-driven feature. So let's assume here in Lincoln or Omaha or across the state, the dominant carriers are Spectrum, Cox, and Windstream. You can call customer service or go online, and this might be a case of you having to act as trusted advisor to help the senior and go online, and it will identify the service, how it's enabled and turned on or off, how many numbers you can block, and what you can expect. I was checking that during the morning because I knew I'd be talking about it in the afternoon. The information is abundantly available. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Ryan, thank you so much. Thank you for a terrific presentation. Thanks to all of you for participating in this training. Again, 493 people registered. There could be more. And we certainly hope that you found the day to be informative. Just a reminder, please complete your evaluation, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you, everyone.